Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Prasanna Kumar Patra from Utkal University, Bhubaneswar. Today we will discuss the module Health and Environment from the paper Human Growth, Development and Nutrition. So students, let us see what we are going to learn in this module. The purpose of this module is to understand the concepts of health and environment. This module also intended to acquaint the students with some of the significant issues like concern on environmental and health, concern on public health and climate and health. Globalization and infectious disease is also the focus of this module. Environment-related issues that affect our health have been one of the most important triggers in the increasing awareness of the need for better environmental management. The changes in our environment induced by human activities in nearly every sphere of life have been an influence on our health patterns. Development has created several long-term health problems, which better healthcare has led to longer lifespan, coupled with lowered infant mortality. It has also led to an unprecedented growth in our population, which has negative implications on environmental quality. A better health status of a society will bring about a better way of life only if it is coupled with stabilizing population growth. Concerns on environmental and health. Every minute, 5 children in developing countries die from malaria or diarrhea. Every hour, 100 more children die as a result of exposure to indoor smoke from solid fuels. Every day, almost 3,000 people in low and middle income countries die from road traffic injuries. In the poorest countries, most of these deaths are among pedestrians. Every month, nearly 19,000 people in developing countries die from unintentional poisonings, often as a result of exposure to toxic chemicals and pesticides in their work or home environments. Environmental hazards and related illnesses kill millions globally every year. The World Health Report of 2002. But while the victims share a common fate, their problems are not necessarily linked in either today's policy agendas or in the minds and actions of decision makers. Much of the environmental disease burden is attributable to a few key risks. Those include unsafe water and sanitation, vector-borne disease, indoor smoke from solid fuels, toxic hazards, and global environmental change, as well as unsustainable patterns of development that contribute to air pollution, traffic injury, and other forms of urban environmental degradation. Along with the human toll, developing countries bear the economic cost of lost productivity, the burden on the health sector, degraded resources, and long-term social consequences. Against these stark realities, policymakers in the developing world grapple with a rapid rate of modernization and change. They face critical developmental decisions that require a thorough consideration of impacts on environment and health. It deals with A. Concerns on natural resources and B. Concerns on public health. First, concerns on natural resources. If only a few people live along the river, their bathing in the river will not jeopardize the use of the river as a source for drinking water. But the river loses this function when a road construction emits its waste into the river. When many people live along the river water can only be used for one purpose, either drinking water, bathing, or as a waste belt. We harvest a portion of the flora and fauna available in the nature. We use water and wind, we cultivate land, and we extract oil, gas, and other minerals. In a nutshell, we need the nature as a resource for production and consumption, but we also need it to emit our waste. Both activities may change the characteristics of the nature, resulting in adverse effects on our public health. The various production functions of the environment and may have negative impact on ecosystems themselves. The point number 2 is concerns on public health. Public health is concerned with threats to the overall health of the population of a community. It generally concentrates on surveillance and control of infectious diseases and promotion of healthy behaviors. In many ways, public health is largely a modern concept, although it has roots in antiquity. In order for public health policies and programs to develop, it was necessary for governments to gain some understanding of the causes of disease. Early on, it was recognized that polluted water and lack of proper waste disposal were implicated in spreading vector-borne diseases. By Roman times, it was well understood that proper diversion of human waste was a necessary tenet of public health in urban areas. Concern on production functions. The nature is big resource for our production and consumption patterns. This resource is the production function of the nature. Actually, the environment has a number of production functions. It provides land, it provides energy, water, and raw materials. It also provides space to dump our waste. D. Concerns on eco-values. Human behavior affects the flora and fauna in particular areas. Besides the values as a resource for production and consumption, nature has a value to and by itself. When a certain species of animal becomes distinct in a certain area, this is not only sad but will have serious consequences for the population of other. Under these circumstances, the flora and fauna will regenerate itself. However, when the harvest exceeds the bearing capacity, it will affect the regeneration capacity and population size. As a result, certain species may become distinct. Similarly, nature has the capacity to transform waste in useful materials, which it uses in its regeneration processes. Think of the production of compost that is used to feed the soil and plants. However, when the composition and amount of waste exceeds the capacity of the nature to transform, the waste accumulates and changes the nature into a waste belt. Depending on the half times of the waste components, eco values and natural production values may be lost for extreme long times. In other words, many natural resources are relative scarce when their use is limited, but when their use is beyond a certain capacity, they transform from relative scarce resources into absolute scarce resources. The capacity of the nature is referred to as environmental user space, and maximum tolerated bearing capacity is referred to as limited environmental user space. Environmental health. Environmental health, as defined by World Health Organization, comprises those aspects of human health, including the quality of life, that are determined by physical, chemical, biological, social, and psychosocial factors in the environment. It also refers to the theory and practice of assessing, correcting, controlling, and preventing those factors in the environment that adversely affect the health of present and future generations. Our environment affects health in a variety of ways. Climate and weather affect human health. Public health depends on sufficient amounts of good quality food, safe drinking water, and adequate shelter. Natural disasters such as storms, hurricanes, and floods still kill many people every year. Unprecedented rainfall triggers epidemics of malaria and waterborne diseases. Global climate change has serious health implications. Many countries will have to adapt to uncertain climatic conditions due to global warming. As our climate is changing, we may no longer know what to expect. There are increasing storms in some countries, drought in others, and temperature rise throughout the world. The El Nino winds affect weather worldwide. The El Nino event of 1997-98 had serious impacts on health and well-being of millions of people in many countries. It created serious drought, floods, and triggered epidemics. New strategies must be evolved to reduce our vulnerability to climate variability and changes. Economic inequality and environmental changes are closely connected to each other. Poor countries are unable to meet required emission standards to slow down climate change. The depletion of ozone in the stratosphere, that is middle atmosphere, also has an important impact on global climate and in turn human health, increasing the amount of harmful ultraviolet radiation that reaches the Earth's surface. This results in diseases such as skin cancer. Development strategies that do not incorporate ecological safeguards often lead to ill health, while strategies that can promote health invariably also protect an environment. Thus, environmental health and human health are closely interlinked. An improvement in health is central to sound environmental management. However, this is rarely given sufficient importance in planning development strategies. Climate and health. Centuries of human civilization have helped mankind to adapt to living in a wide variety of climates, from the hot tropics to the cold Arctic, in deserts, marshlands, and in the high mountains. Both climate and weather have a powerful impact in human life and health issues. Natural disasters such as heavy rains, floods, and hurricanes can severely affect the health of a community. Poor people are more vulnerable to the health impacts of climate variability than the rich. Of approximately 80,000 deaths which occur worldwide each year as a result of natural disasters, about 90% are in poor countries. In weather triggered disasters, hundreds of people and animals die, homes are destroyed, crops and other resources are lost. Public health infrastructure like sewage disposal system, waste management, hospitals and roads are damaged. The cyclone in Orissa in 1999 caused 10,000 deaths. The total number of people affected was estimated at 10 to 15 million. Human physiology can adapt to changes in weather within certain limits. However, marked short-term fluctuations in weather lead to serious health issues. Heat waves causes heat-related illness and deaths. The elderly and persons with existing heart or respiratory diseases are more vulnerable. The heat wave in India in 1998 was associated with many deaths. Climate plays an important role in vector-borne diseases transmitted by insects like mosquitoes. These disease transmitters are sensitive to the direct effect of climate, such as temperature, rainfall patterns, and wind. Climate affects their distribution and abundance through its effects on host plants and animals. Malaria transmission is particularly sensitive to weather and climate. Unusual weather conditions, for example, a heavy downpour, can greatly increase the mosquito population and trigger an epidemic in the desert. And at the highland fringes of malaria areas, malaria transmission is unstable and the human population lacks inherent protective immunity. Thus, when weather conditions such as rainfall and temperature favor transmission, serious epidemics occur in such area. The fluctuation in malaria over the year have also been linked to changes in rainfall associated with the El Nino cycle. Globalization and infectious disease. Globalization is a worldwide process which includes the internationalization of communication, trade and economic organization. It involves parallel changes such as rapid social, economic and political adjustments. While globalization has the potential to enhance the lives and living standards of certain population groups. For the poor and marginalized populations in both the non-formal as well as formal economic sectors of developing countries, globalization enhances economic inequalities. Industry. Tuberculosis kills approximately 2 million people each year. In India, the disease has re-emerged and is now more difficult to treat. In 1993, the WHO declared that tuberculosis had become a global emergency. It is estimated that between 2002 and 2020, approximately 1,000 million people will be newly infected. Over 150 million people will get sick and 36 million will die of tuberculosis if its control is not rapidly strengthened. Tuberculosis is a contagious disease that is spread through the air. Only people who are sick with pulmonary into the air. When infectious people cough, sneeze, talk or spit, they emit the tubercle bacilli into the air. When a healthy person inhales this, she or he gets infected by the disease. The symptoms include prolonged fever, coughing spells and weight loss. It is estimated that, left untreated, each patient of active tuberculosis will infect on an average between 10 to 15 every year. But people infected with tuberculosis will not necessarily get sick with the disease. The immune dormant for years. When an individual's immune system is weakened, the chances of getting active tuberculosis are greater. Malaria is a life-threatening parasitic disease transmitted by mosquitoes. The cause of malaria, a single-celled parasite called Plasmodium, was discovered in 1880. Later, it was found that parasite is transmitted from person to person through the bite of female Anopheles mosquito, which requires blood for the growth of her eggs. Water supply, sanitation and hygiene development. Among the main problems are lack of priority given to the sector, lack of financial resources, erratic water supply and sanitation services, poor hygiene related to behavior patterns and inadequate sanitation in public places such as schools, hotels, hospitals, health centers, etc. One of the most important aspects is a lack of environmental education and awareness that this disease possesses are related to poor environment management in various sectors. Providing access to sufficient quantities of safe water, facilities for sanitary disposal of excreta, and introducing sound hygiene related behavior can reduce the morbidity and mortality caused by risk factors. Globally, about 2.4 million people live under highly unsanitary conditions. Poor hygiene increases the exposure to risk of incidents and spread of infectious diseases. Water improperly stored in homes is frequently contaminated by inadequate management at the household level. This can be easily reduced through education and awareness about how waterborne diseases are transmitted. An important aspect of water-related diseases, in particular water-related vector-borne diseases, is the way water resources are developed and managed. In many parts of the world, the adverse health impacts of dam construction, irrigation development, and flood control is related to increased incidence of malaria, Japanese encephalitis, schistosomiasis, lymphatic filariasis, and other conditions. Other health issues indirectly associated with water resources development includes nutritional status, exposure to agricultural pesticides and their residues. Risk due to chemicals in food. Food contaminated by chemicals is an important public health concern. This contamination may occur through environmental pollution of the air, water, and soil. Toxic metals, PCBs, and dioxins, or the intentional use of various chemicals such as pesticides, animal drugs, and other agrochemicals have serious consequences on human health. Food additives and contaminants used during food manufacture and processing also adversely affect human health. Disease spread by food. Some foodborne diseases, though well recognized, have recently become more common. For example, outbreaks of salmonellosis, which have been reported for decades, have increased within the last 25 years. In the Western Hemisphere and in Europe, Salmonella serotype enteritidis or SE has become a prominent strain. Investigations of SE outbreaks indicate that its emergence is largely related to the consumption of poultry or eggs. While cholera has devastated much of Asia and Africa for years, its reintroduction for the first time in almost a century on the South America continent in 1991 is an example of a well-recognized infectious disease re-emerging in a region after decades. While cholera is often waterborne, many foods also transmit the infection. In Latin America, ice and raw or underprocessed seafood are important causes for cholera transmission. Infection with a specific type of Escherichia coli was first described in 1982. Subsequently, it has emerged rapidly as a major cause of bloody diarrhea and acute renal failure. The infection is sometimes fatal, particularly in children. Outbreaks of infection, generally associated with beef, have been reported in Australia, Canada, Japan, USA, and various European countries, and in South Africa. Outbreaks have also implicated alfalfa sprouts, unpasteurized fruit juice, lettuce, game meat, that is meat of wild animals, and cheese curd. So students, let us summarize what we have learned in this module. We have learned that environment related issues that affect our health have been one of the most important triggers in the increasing awareness of the need for better environmental management. We also learned that development has created several long-term health problems. Every minute, 5 children in developing countries die from malaria or diarrhea. Much of the environmental disease burden is attributable to a few key risks. If only a few people live along the river, their bathing in the river will not jeopardize the use of the river as a source of drinking water. We also learned that public health is concerned with threats to the overall health of the population of a community. The nature is one big resource for our production and consumption patterns. Human behavior affects the flora and fauna in particular areas. Depending on the half times of the waste components, eco values and natural production value may be lost for extreme long times. We also learned that environmental health, as defined by the World Health Organization, comprises those aspects of human health, including the quality of life, that are determined by physical, chemical, biological, social, and psychosocial factors in the environment. Millions of children die every year due to diarrhea from contaminated water or food. Millions of people are exposed to hazardous chemicals in their workplace or homes that lead to poor health due to industrial products where controls are not adhered to. Strategies to provide clean, potable water and nutrition to all people are an important part of a healthy living environment. We also learned that centuries of human civilization have helped mankind to adapt to living in a wide variety of climates, from the hot tropics to the cold Arctic, in deserts, marshlands, and in high mountains. Any infectious diseases have re-emerged with a vengeance. What we learn also includes that globalization is a worldwide process which includes the internationalization of communication, trade, and economic organization. Globally, about 2.4 million people live under highly unsanitary conditions. What we also observed that some foodborne diseases, through well recognized, have recently become more common. Thank you.